Sonic's Rendezvous Band with their single City Slang. Band from a heart of rock and roll back in the day, Detroit, where the Stooges came from, and MC5. In fact, Fred Sonic Smith from this band was a guitarist for the MC5, and City Slang was Sonic's Rendezvous Band one single that was released during Smith's lifetime. So great stuff there from the 70s, and also the Helicopters covered this song and did a hell of a job as well. But I thought I'd go with the original. This is Hexes and Soldiers, episode 19. My name is Jason. Shoutouts, I'll just say hey to all my wargaming brothers out there. And even though you guys don't listen to this show, I'm going to give a shout out to when you guys that do listen to this show see somebody playing a war game at a store or wherever, tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, that one guy from Hexes and Soldiers says hey, and he'll look at you confused, and it'll be great fun. And stated last time I'd take a break, but the saying when it rains it pours still holds true, and it has poured by way of news. So rather than take a break and then do the news, which would be a week old and stale and moldy, I thought I'd go ahead and kick this one out now and then take a break. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, lots of news. And first off, I should say that Marco Wargamer, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this gentleman, or if any of you are. I assume a lot of you are, as I am myself. And the gentleman has posted quite a number of things and has been prolific in his uploads. Is a college professor, has a family. Well, he's announced that he's going to post 15 videos a day for the next 9 years. Now, I don't know how he intends to do this. That is a lofty goal. I admire him for his intention. But I don't know how he plans to pull this off, and it'll be interesting to see just if he can pull this off. MMP has finally announced that Hecapale, the Finnish module, is going to be available to order in April. So that's fantastic news. And additionally, speaking of ASL, the next ASL tournament, and I think this is a new one, I haven't heard of this before, has been announced. And this one's going to be known as the annual I-405 event. And what they're trying to do is, apparently in order to add an element of realism by way of tension and pressure, the tournament's going to be held directly in the middle of LA's I-405 freeway during rush hour traffic. And apparently the highway department has been nice enough to help out, and they're going to be putting red cones on the highway in order to carve out a plain area and allow traffic to effectively flow around the plain area, so that won't be impeded. Yeah, and it should be a blast, so check that out. And the holders of this event ask that you bring proof of insurance and sign a waiver. So I'm not sure what that's about. And then finally, I'll just say April Fools. So, yeah, all that's junk. But the real news is plenty of news. So I'm going to get started here. And in fact, I have no idea how long this show is going to run, and it may yet prove to be the longest show yet. So let's see how it goes. Let me start by saying, though, that I finally talked to my brother, who is a big fan of screens over boards, and got him talked into playing The Hunters. So for his birthday, I ordered the second printing of that for him, and he's always been a long U-boat fan, so he should get a kick out of this. And it'd be interesting to find out just what he what the last board game he played was, because I don't know if any of you how much you followed along with these shows, but he's the guy that got me into board games and war games, and that's what he started out with. And I think he petered out in the mid-90s once computers came along, and I remember he had an Amiga computer with some games for that. But anyway, he used to play this stuff, and I'd be curious to know just what his last analog war game was. And then I also noticed that in addition to the bolt action stuff that's going on, and I spoke a little bit about that in the past, there seems to be another movement gaining ground, and that is the battle group movement. And I wasn't aware of this until recently, but This apparently is another World War II miniatures rules system, and I watched a video on this. There's a couple out there. A very nice hardback rule book, Flames of War-esque in style, but obviously different game mechanic, and looks pretty interesting. And then they have another book which allows you to, I guess, recreate the battles that took place in Kursk. But the stuff looks all right. I'm kind of intrigued, and there's a mockingbird syndrome going around the industry, and I understand that. If something works, then another company wants to do likewise, and well, make some money and pump out a similar product. And this looks similar in some ways, yet different. And like I said, if you watch the videos, you might be able to. Well, you should be able to pick up what I'm talking about. And so yeah, that looks good. And then the hardcore news, we have Academy Games just last night announced that they will be sponsoring a Conflict of Heroes tournament at the SWA Gameathon, which would be Saturday, April 12th. So they didn't give us a lot of notice here, but I'm not sure about that. Starting at 9 in the morning at Proctor's Theater and Convention Center in Schenectady, New York. And this is an officially sanctioned event sponsored by Academy Games. And there will be prizes. And for more information regarding that, how to sign up, things of that nature, I would direct you to the Academy Games site. And I would assume they'd have something about that. GMT finally posted an update. Looks like they're working on a Ukraine 43 reprint, which I've already announced. And then Panzer expansion number 3 has been delayed by a couple months, they say. So it looks like end of May for this title, if any of you are holding out for this. GMT is still actively looking for iOS development partners. And even though many of their best-selling games are now being developed for tablets, they still have some really excellent series and games that they think would play great on a tablet. So they'd like to add relationships with a few more experienced companies if they can find good fits. And their personal wish list of games they'd like to find a developer for, as they'd love to play any of these on iPad, is as such. They're interested in Combat Commander, Fast Action Battles, Battles of the AM Rev series, any of their card-driven games, especially Labyrinth and Washington's War, Urban Sprawl, Maneuver, Sekigahara, Conquest of Paradise, and finally Thunder Alley. So it looks like a lot of these games and a few companies are breaking through to the other side and putting this stuff on iPad, and some of them are even doing iPhone. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is going to be the future of wargaming. And of course, the analog cardboard stuff will never go away, but in a sense, this is a good thing because it allows these companies to get a little more money, which is good for us, which means then they can produce more things. But it's almost a kind of rebirth of wargaming. I mean, a lot of these things are just hitting the iPad, and it's a fresh part of the industry for any of you interested in getting into it that have knowledge and know-how when it comes to developing apps and things and love war games. I mean, this is where it's at. Can't go wrong. So, also, Unconditional Surrender World War II in Europe will begin shipping to P500 orders on April 11th. And they have a couple new P500 editions, and this looks really cool. Illusions of Glory is Perry Silverman's Paths of Glory system game that takes a detailed card-driven game treatment to the East Front in World War I. Now, I'm not the biggest World War I fan, but I do have a proclivity for the Eastern Front, and that applies to not only World War II, but World War I as well. And this just fascinates me. It says, for you Paths of Glory lovers, check this out. I think you'll like what you see. When we added designer Jim Day's Panzer game, which is now sold out, to our list a few years back, we heard from a lot of players asking, when is Jim going to do a new version of Main Battle Tank? And the answer was after the first few Panzer modules are finished and Jim is time to work on main battle tank. Well, the time is here, so main battle tank fans rejoice. As we did with Panzer, we're announcing the main battle tank game and 2 boxed expansions, initially with more planned down the road. The new sub-game from Consim Press, Silent Victory, has surpassed its P500 goal, which I knew it would. Pretty decent game, at least the Hunters was. Fields of Despair, 1914 to 1918, is about halfway there as far as reaching its P500 goal. Clash of Giants Civil War, which covers the battles of Second Bull Run and Gettysburg, has 426 orders to date. Both No Retreat French and Polish and Italian fronts have less than 400 orders placed. Twin Peaks from the Great Battles of the American Civil War series. I guess this has nothing to do with David Lynch, huh? Volume number 7 has 492 orders to date. And Fire in the Lake, Insurgency in Vietnam has, you ready? 1,516 orders to date. So you think people don't like this coin series and aren't just pumped to get this game? They are. A lot of people anticipating this thing. Also, Triumph and Tragedy and Goal on 73 are almost there as far as their P500 goals. Just a few more orders and they'll reach the mark. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I left a few things out, so feel free to take a look at the GMT site to get the full money. And also I should mention just one last thing. The lineup for their reprints looks like this. You're going to get Commands and Colors Ancients, expansions 2 and 3, followed by Fields of Fire, 2nd edition, Pax Romana, 2nd edition, and the Great Battles of Alexander, Deluxe edition. So there you go, GMT updating their site with news and whatnot. And then finally, Be Still My Heart MMP has updated their news, and a lot going on there as well. I'll read most of it for you. Start off by saying MMP is a big supporter of the World War II Foundation, and I don't know if any of you were aware of this, but they are. And the mission of the World War II Foundation is to develop an awareness and appreciation in today's culture of the many contributions and sacrifices made by the men and women of the United States military during World War II, and to teach future Americans about the heroic role they played in ensuring the basic freedoms enjoyed by Americans today. And they say that we at MMP are big supporters of the World War II Foundation and highly recommend the educational documentaries that the Foundation produces. Proceeds from their Winter Offensive tournaments and from all of their Winter Offensive bonus packs are donated to the World War II Foundation, and they asked for you to please take a look at the World War II Foundation brochure, as they encourage you to support the Foundation and to check out its documentaries at the PBS store. So, nice plug for the World War II Foundation. Then this starts off with Reluctant Enemies is nearing shipping. And of course, this is meant to serve as an accessible introduction to the OCS series. One map, about 60 major combat units to play at any time. I think I've talked about this in the past. Allows for a level of fast-paced play not previously seen in any OCS game, and overall provides a fascinating view into Operation Exporter, what many call only a sideshow, in the larger conflict of World War II. And then they go into a little depth about Operation Exporter, some terrain issues, and then included with Reluctant Enemies is the OCS rules summary and explanation, which is a 4-page concise and informative narrative of what OCS is and how the mechanics work, written by Steve Jansen, who is an OCS veteran of many years. It's a great overview to get you started. And finally, also included with Reluctant Enemies, is the long-awaited OCS Starter Guide, which is a 16-page step-by-step replay of the first turn of Reluctant Enemies with color illustrations of examples of play, written by Chip Saltzman, a newer OCS player himself. The guide explains in detail the various mechanics of OCS from the perspective of a new player, and I'm going to guess that Hipshot will not be purchasing this, as he is a longtime OCS veteran, and I'm not sure what need he would have of an introductory OCS starter kit, if you will. But that's that. And then product and pipeline update. Action Pack 9 is currently shipping to pre-orders. I'm happy for you guys. I did not pre-order this. I am disappointed in myself. After that is finished, we are ready to start shipping Reluctant Enemies. And following on the heels of Reluctant Enemies is Storm over Dien Bien Phu, their area movement game. And if you're interested in this, go to the MMP site to find out more. They say that cards and counters are already printed. Box rules, charts, and maps are currently at the printer and should be in-house soon. To be followed by, and not necessarily in this order, the Mighty Endeavor 2, Salerno, and Korea. And these three are ready to go, they say, so get your pre-order in. Going up on pre-order shortly is going to be ASL Action Pack 10 with 2 ASL maps and 10 scenarios from Chaz and the gang. Also coming up for pre-order shortly is the latest from Dean and his crew, Beyond the Rhine. OCS is a 4-map monster OCS game covering the entire Western Front from September 44 to the spring of 45. And the game includes scenarios covering Market Garden and the Battle of the Bulge, so this thing is probably bigger than most small houses, and I don't know how you're supposed to play it, but it sounds really cool. Coming out of the first week in August will be Special Ops 5, and featuring a new game on Bushy Run and the usual assortment of articles and ASL stuff. And that brings to mind ASL Journal number 11. Can we expect to see that this year? I hope. I don't know. Also going up on pre-order before long, and here's the real news, will be The Greatest Day, Sword, Juno, and Gold Beaches from the Grand Tactical series. That is Adam Starkweather's baby. And Hakapale, both of which are still in layout. And they're confident both of these will reach their pre-order number in short time, and I think they can be confident in that. So they're making sure they're ready to print as soon as they go on pre-order, and I guarantee you I will be the first one to pre-order Hakapale. Just saying. VCS Salerno on September 3rd of 1943. The Allies invaded the Calabrian Peninsula directly from the island of Sicily and what was known as Operation Baytown. And the game covering this uses a varied scale map that depicts all 3 operations that are assigned the task of establishing bases for the removal and defeat of the German 10th Army and driving north to establish a second front that was promised to dear Russian Premier Joseph Stalin, our ally in the war. And the game system uses a variable combat system strength chit, which sounds cool, to resolve combat and takes combat assets such as air, armor, artillery, and unit integrity into consideration in a measured support-driven method. Units are regiment, battalion, except the invasion force that begins broken down and rebuilds as the establishment on shore progresses. Airborne forces are used both in the 18-turn historical campaign and in the additional 4 scenarios. 1 short invasion, and 3 alternate possibilities to the campaign. You can pre-order this great game today. And The Greatest Day, Sword, Juno, and Gold Beaches. They're plugging this. Again, they've already done this, but basically, for those of you that missed it, the first game of Grand Tactical Series, massive new set of games on D-Day. The Greatest Day, 4 years in the making. From teams of researchers to scores of playtesters to almost a dozen proofreaders and editors. And the game includes 19 scenarios, ranging from small 2-hour games to some of the most exciting moments of the Normandy battles, all the way up to a massive campaign game that will present you with a challenge that is second to none. We've also tweaked the game system and added more by adding less. You know, I'm not sure who writes these news articles for MMP, but I really dig it. The Grand Tactical series is back and it's better than ever. Commandos, DD tanks, captured French equipment, powerful German armored forces, heroes and villains, it's all here. And merely awaits your breaking the shrink wrap and diving into the most immersive play experience that MMP has ever offered. Wow, that's saying a lot. Warriors of Japan says the struggle is never ending. The battle between a central authority and separate smaller authority. Whether it's Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson, today's Democrats and Republicans, or 14th century Japan, it is the struggle of who should rule. In Japan, a future of a torn apart country would be determined for centuries to come. The island of Japan would not know peace again until the final battle of Sekigahara in 1600. And of course, GMT has a game by that name. It was the time Nanboku Cho, two courts of Japan, the Northern Imperial Court and the Southern Imperial Court, would fight for supremacy of the islands, and war would rage over the entire country for 50 years. The South would concede in the end, but in came the feudalism and a powerless shogun. Japan was fractured and would await a true leader with the name of Oda Nobunaga to start to unify the long-suffering country. Warriors of Japan offers a glimpse into this fascinating period of history, covering the vital 5-year period when the issue was decided. If you know the award-winning game Warriors of God, you'll be up and playing in 5 minutes after reading the 4 paragraphs that start the rules. Wow. If you don't know Warriors of God, you'll be playing in just a little more time, as this game emphasizes the play and player skill over a ton of rules. Leader betrayal, surprise appearances, and sudden double crosses abound in this game. The player that best adapts will more often come up on top. Don't let the topic scare you off. This is a classic military situation that you can learn about by playing it and have a lot of fun at the same time. And I'll have to say that regarding the era of the shogun and the samurai, um, has always interested me and always did like stuff that dealt with this subject. Last Stand, to paraphrase what Churchill said of another battle of World War II, it was not the end. It was not even the beginning of the end, but it was perhaps the end of the beginning. Fall 41, and Germany stood at the very edge of victory. Just more great push, and the Soviet Union would fall and the world would be theirs. A couple typos in their news. This was Operation Typhoon, the great turning point of the terrible war of the 20th century. Germany would never be close to ruling the world again, but the nightmare didn't happen. The Soviet forces rallied as close to the end as it dared. It was their last stand. And in the last stand, you'll have your chance to stop the Germans too. In a complex yet easy to understand system, you'll fight this great battle and decide the fate of the world in 6 to 8 hours. With rules covering every aspect of the battle, the front will move closer and closer to Moscow as the Soviets scramble to buy time to allow the great counterattack to come. As for the first time, a complete scenario of the Soviet counterstrike is offered to show how it was done, in addition to the 2 campaign games offered in the box. Beautiful art and an elegant design by one of the best known of the Japanese designers, and I agree with this statement, Masahiro Yamazaki. Presents his finest game. You can pre-order The Last Stand Battle for Moscow 41 to 42 today as well. And I think it's just a matter of time before somebody creates a game, and this would be the game of all games. And how you would do it is create almost an hour by hour simulation of the Eastern Front, and I think the way you would have to do it is you would have to get subscribers, and I think once a week or once a month they would be mailed the next installment of the game, and this would go on for years. It sounds crazy, but hey, listen, I think somebody might be up for that someday. And guess what? There would be a lot of people buying in, I guarantee you. I would probably be one of them. Königsberg 45, and we're almost done here with this. Germany was never so close in the fall of 41, and never so far from winning as in January of 45. The Soviet Union was entering Germany proper for the first time, and Germany was desperate to fight them off. In a classic internal lines military situation, Germany had to defend with some of the best and some of the worst units that would field the entire war. Using their excellent panzer forces that would never again fight as a cohesive force so effectively, they had to bolster up failing defenses across the entire front, while the veteran Soviet army came into Germany thirsting for revenge. Using the award-winning A Victory Loss system, Swedish designer Stefan Ekstrom presents Königsberg 45. And I think this is the Stefan from Three Crowns Games in Sweden, from whom I ordered Army Group Narva. Yeah, I believe that's the same guy. Using the engine of A Victory Lost, Stefan has added in all the additions that made this battle unique and terrible. From atrocities to the Admiral Hipper cruiser, you find it all here, and yet easy to play, but not as easy to master. And again, I think I've already covered some of this stuff in the past, and MMP has recycled it as a new parentheses S parentheses. Nevertheless, there it is. And again, pre-order Königsberg 45 today. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop MMP a line at info@multimanpublishing.com, and they will try their best to answer your question. And they say, sign that sincerely, Brian, Perry, and the crew at MMP. Would also like to remind you that you can follow MMP on Twitter. Now, I don't follow anybody on Twitter, but were I to do so, MMP would probably be the first thing I would follow, and then something probably to do with blues hockey. But those of you interested, yeah, you can follow MMP on Twitter, and nothing wrong with that. And also noticed something with my recent MMP order that I received, that a Luann Yos had, I guess, completed the order, checked it, or packed it, or something. But I don't know if is that Brian's wife or mother or daughter. Surely he's not employed his grandmother at MMP here. But it's kind of cool that they keep the family involved. Anyway, one last piece of news, and I wasn't aware of this. I'll have to tip my hat to Anthony Salveggio for alerting me to this. But Worthington Games has a game out called Hold Fast Russia 41 to 42, and it's their strategic World War II game on the Russian campaign. It's the first of their campaigns World War II series. Uses wooden blocks for fog of war and hex movement. Clean mechanics and a manageable number of units allow for the entire campaign to be played in an evening. Objectives are clear. Hold 2 of the 3 victory location cities at the end of the game, but with mud and supplies a constant factor, German armor always a threat, and winter bringing a boost to Russian resources and manpower, it is not easy for either side to hold fast. The world will hold its breath, and looks pretty interesting. I took a look at that. So here we go. What I plan to do with the bulk of this show is focus on ASL. Now, I've focused on ASL once before, but it was more of a, how do I put this, pigeonholed type view, and anybody that's a beginner or sitting on the fence with ASL, well, it didn't help them out at all. So what I'm going to do is focus on ASL, but in a more general overview type fashion, and aim this more at the beginner, or like I say, the guy sitting on the fence who doesn't know which side to fall off. Hopefully he'll know by the time the show's over. So I have also incorporated a top 10 list. In fact, 2 lists, 2 numerical lists. And the first one is ASL 10 reasons, and this would be 10 reasons for ASL, and I'll balance this out. So after this, we'll go into why you may not want to get into ASL. So I'll start with the bottom, and hopefully remember to read something I have back at the top. Start with number 10, and create your own. And what I mean by that is, once you learn how to play this, it isn't hard to create your own scenarios. This is a game that allows a somewhat more experienced player to utilize the system to recreate nearly any World War II tactical battle he can think of. Now, I don't think that there is a scenario for every battle and skirmish in World War II. In fact, I would like to start a list of scenarios that aren't covered in the future. But yeah, there's a ton of stuff that I'm sure hasn't been covered, and if you find yourself pining to play that, well, you are allowed that option with the way the game is set up and the rules and everything. Yeah, you can play that particular battle. Number 9, third-party product. And now you have to be careful here, but if you do your homework, there really are some nice third-party product out there from which to enjoy. You've got LaFranc Turrier with their Chom game that I talked about. Just beautiful. Dispatches from the Bunker. In fact, MMP liked these guys enough that they put out a specific scenario pack of scenarios from Dispatches from the Bunker called Out of the Bunker. And then Friendly Fire is another one. Eastside Gamers and Schwerpunkt, to name a few. It's a simple premise. The more the merrier. So yeah, there's just more stuff to choose from, and I tend to stick more to the official MMP product just for financial reasons. But I did, as I said not too long ago, break that rule and pick up the Chom game from LeFranc Touriere, and it's just wonderful to behold. I mean, seriously. Number 8, great artwork and great stories. From the maps to the box art to the historical background each scenario is based on, how could you want anything more? And each scenario starts with a introductory historical synopsis and ends with the way the actual battle turned out, so you can compare and contrast your results to the historical results, and I think that's just fantastic. Number 7, because MMP and the current slew of designers out there live and breathe ASL, and the game is their bread and butter, MMPs, their livelihood. So they take it very seriously, as I would expect them to, and they have a wonderful track record of producing quality, play-tested scenarios and modules. And when you also consider the related support material like the SL Journal, I mean, do I even need to go on here? But I will. Number 6, geomorphic map boards that don't take up a lot of space, and it's a simple but ingenious thing. Of course, the space thing, well, you've got some historical ASL modules that are pretty big, but the bulk of the stuff takes place on individual boards or just a couple boards, and they're small. They don't require a lot of space if you're hurting for space. And yeah, the way it's designed is you can combine boards to other boards and they match up. It's just a brilliant concept. Number 5, collectible, high resale value. When you buy an ASL product, you can consider it an investment in your future. And I really mean this. If you take care of it, especially if you do the twofer and buy two of everything. I know that gets pretty expensive, but you buy one as a play copy and one to keep in the shrink. I'm telling you, you keep an eye on eBay and things. This stuff goes up in price every year. So you're not hurting yourself by buying it, because you know that in the future you'll be able to resell it and probably most likely, if not get what you paid for it, almost assuredly get more than what you paid for it. Number 4, you've got your ASL specific tournaments such as Winter Offensive, among others. In fact, there's one right around the corner, the 2014 ASL Open in Chicago, and then of course you have the I-405 tournament if you care to play in the middle of a freeway. But yeah, the ASL has their own tournaments, and I think that's great. Number 3, once you learn it, it's like the Baskin Robbins of war games. With more flavors than Baskin could ever have dreamed of, the game never gets old, be it Europe or the Pacific, early, mid, or late war. You can game it all, and really and truly, I don't see how you can get bored with this game, because if you get tired of one thing, just move to a different area, move to a different time, and game that. So that's number 3. Number 2, there is a growing, considerate, welcoming community that is, and I have in parentheses usually, more than willing to help out the newcomer. And it's true. I mean, if you're new to this thing and you're confused or you're lost or you need help, there are sites all over the internet with people just dying to demonstrate their knowledge of ASL and bring some new sheep into the fold. And it's a great thing. So that's number 2. And finally, number 1, drum roll please. I'll have to get a soundbite for that someday, huh? Simply the greatest tactical World War II game that ever lived. The game is an exciting, realistic simulation of squad level combat, and I'm telling you, it can't be beat. What's that old saying with the car salesman? You've tried the rest, now try the best. Hey, there's tons of stuff out there. Give it a shot, but you're wasting your time. Just cut to the chase, learn to play ASL, and that's that. So, as I stated, I'll balance this with I come up with 7 reasons here. And then also let me add that before I get into that, right now, at this particular time in wargaming history is really a better time than ever to get into ASL. with all the stuff that has been released, yeah, there really is something out there for everyone, and it just continues to grow. So here are 7 reasons you may consider when it comes to avoiding ASL. Now, I'm going to be fair here. Number 7, you will learn to love and hate Plano, especially if you're OCD. And if you're not familiar with this, Plano is a brand of plastic containers that once you've punched and sprayed and clipped your counters, that you can sort and kind of segregate your counters in for easy access and storage. And well, there's a lot of stuff out there, and you're going to need a Plano for every little thing. So you'll have a lot of those, and that kind of tends to take up space, I guess, but could be worse. Number 6, you may have trouble finding players at your local game store, depending. Now, once you learn, you got to remember, not everyone is going to be as excited as you are that you now know how to play SL. They're not going to be as eager to play just because you now know. And it's probably going to take some convincing and even blackmailing to get someone to invest and learn ASL like you did. And but don't give up. I mean, there are people out there. In fact, there's also plenty of people out there that do know how to play, would love to play. You just have to, I don't know, put an ad on Craigslist or start a website, or I don't know, put a ad up at your local game store, see what happens. Number 5, probably one of the most dangerous reasons to avoid ASL: jealousy. Now, your significant other may become dangerously envious. You have to be careful taking that big old rule book to bed or rolling over and reading the ASL journal after performing certain husbandly duties, because some fireworks could erupt, and not of the enjoyable kind. Number 4, frustration. There should be a disclaimer out there somewhere regarding the newly acquired anticipation you will have when it comes to upcoming ASL releases, and this syndrome is better known as farsightedness and occurs when you slowly stop seeing the things that are here now before you and start imagining, lusting even, obsessing over the things to come. And boy howdy, let me tell you, some of them take a while. Case in point, the Finnish module Hekapelle. Number 3, you will never look at certain games the same way again. And it's true, once you learn to play this, you will look oddly at the games you used to play and wonder how you were able to play and enjoy them. And this risks a velveteen rabbit syndrome, wherein those games will just sit on the shelf ignored, collecting dust as you play ASL scenario after scenario. Number 2, time. Remember when you had time to watch your favorite show? When you could spend all weekend with your kid tossing a ball around? When you used to walk the dog? When you used to fix things up around the house? Well, when you no longer know what the mother of dragons is up to, your kid's a neglected delinquent, the dog is bloated from no exercise, and your house has been condemned unfit to live in, don't say you weren't warned. And yeah, you can find a ton of short scenarios, but then you're going to want to play another, and then another. So, you see, you have to remember this game isn't like other games. It is addictive, and it is a way of life. And finally, drumroll, money. Once you hop in, the number 1 reason you perhaps may not want to get into this is money. Chances are you're not going to want to hop out. And this means a lot of this stuff isn't cheap, and especially the out of print stuff. Unfortunately, there is a mighty chunk of ASL that is out of print, and MMP is doing their best to slowly reprint things and make them accessible. They've done a great job with the Pacific Theater and in producing Empire of the Sun, which combines 2 modules in one, and that's just fantastic. But a lot of this stuff is out of print, and it ain't cheap. So there you go. Some reasons perhaps you may not want to get into ASL. Go ahead and contrast those with the reasons you might want to, and see what you come up with. So how to get started? I mean, so you want to be an ASLer. Are you willing to undergo the rigorous, intense rites of initiation? Are you willing to learn the secret handshake? Are you willing to learn? Okay, there's no secret handshake, and I don't think there's any, at least that I'm aware of, hazing that goes on or rites of initiation. But what do I need to get started? You ask. Well, there's some options, and I'll start with option one, which deals with your ASL rulebook. You're going to need one of those, and you're going to want it to be the second edition. Additionally, you're going to want a copy of Beyond Valor. That's it. If you go the eBay route, you're going to pay about $60 for rulebook, give or take. Maybe $100 for Beyond Valor, give or take. And I'm not sure it matters which edition you get. Maybe get the third edition because it's still available, I believe. It hasn't gone out of print yet. And you're going to pay maybe, I don't know, $85 minimum for Beyond Valor. So you're looking at about 145, $150 for your initial investment. And that might sound high, and well, I guess it is, but when you consider that a couple GMT games would cost about as much, especially once you include shipping, perhaps this puts this into better perspective. Additionally, you don't have to go the eBay route. There is Board Game Geek. Take a look there. Put an ad up in Wargamers Marketplace on Facebook. Tell them you're a newbie looking to get in, and perhaps some sympathetic soul will be merciful in order to bring another sheep into the fold. And there's option two. For the less fearless, begin with ASL Starter Kit 1, which unfortunately, wouldn't you know, is out of print. And I assume they'll be reprinting it someday, but as of right now, they haven't. Again, you can find this on eBay or Board Game Geek, but it's pretty pricey. And well, why would you start here? Well, it's probably the easiest way to learn and contains everything you need to master infantry on the field, including maps, counters, scenarios, and even the dice. Now, I haven't gone the starter kit route. Not even sure how they work. I would assume they have different levels of learning, and you learn a little bit more as you go. Maybe play a little bit, learn a little bit. That's my assumption. I could be wrong. And regarding these starter kits, there's 3 levels, and I agree with the starter kits in that there are 3 levels of knowledge regarding ASL. And of course, there's the basic infantry stuff, which ASL Starter Kit 1 covers. Then there's the ASL Starter Kit 2, or the second level, if you will, which deals with guns. And finally, the third level, or ASL Starter Kit 3, which deals with armor. And the infantry stuff is fairly easy to grasp as far as ASL goes, but the guns are more challenging, and the armor is severely daunting. At least that was my experience. In fact, to this day, I tend to stay away from scenarios with too much armor, and I'm probably missing out, but simply because of its complexity. A problem I probably wouldn't have if I played more scenarios with armor, but as I tend to play these things alone, more often than not, it just becomes too much for one person to manage. And remember, that's just me. You might get the hang of it quicker than I did, so bear that in mind as well. Also, know that once you master Starter Kit 1, there is ASL Starter Kit Beyond the Beaches Starter Kit Bonus Pack number 1, which is a mouthful, specifically produced for the Starter Kit 1 individual in mind. Additionally, there is a Starter Kit Expansion Pack 1 with a couple scenarios for those who are familiar with Starter Kit 1, as well as a few scenarios for those who are familiar with the later Starter Kits. So you get Starter Kit 1 and you grow tired of the scenarios included, you got options. Option 3, by way of options, you can do it my way. And the way I learned ASL was with an old copy of Squad Leader, and then I crossed the bridge over to ASL. And I have to say, it was definitely easier to learn ASL than if I had never played Squad Leader before. Now, there are some major, and I underline major differences between the two, of course. But as far as an introduction, you can do worse. And these old copies of Squad Leader are usually had fairly cheap. So maybe try that. And then option 4, of course, is to make friends with someone that already has this stuff and knows how to play it so he can teach you, and you can, well, maybe borrow some of his things, which I bet rarely happens. I'd be surprised if a diehard ASL fan let somebody borrow his Red Barricades module. They'd have to be pretty good friends. Anyway, finally, option 5 And this might just be your best bet yet. You ready? Buy Decision at Elst. Buy it now from MMP before it goes out of print, because things go out of print guaranteed, and they happen quick. Why? Because it provides all you need to play, from the rules to map to counters, charts, scenarios, and of course the dice as well. It's all here, and it'll only cost you 64 bucks. Now, don't take my word for this. Go to Board Game Geek or go to MMP's site, click on the game, read the back of the box, and then decide. So, sure, it may be slightly more involved learning-wise compared to, say, Starter Kit 1, but you'll also go farther than you would be able to with Starter Kit 1. So, whereas Starter Kit 1 only deals with infantry, Decision at Elst allows you, when you're ready, to learn guns and armor as well. So, for what you get in the price, it's a steal. And then there's a ton of free resources out there. Become best friends with YouTube and Board Game Geek, but especially YouTube, as there is a ton of tutorials on there now compared to just a few years ago. People have finally realized that there is a real use and a real demand for these videos, these ASL tutorials. And more things are getting posted every day, so it's only growing. And of course, Board Game Geek, go there, post a specific question, and you'll get a specific answer. There are people that answer these questions that people post, and it's very helpful. So again, why learn all this, you say, when I can just play Combat Commander or Conflict of Heroes? Well, I'm going to tell you. We can also phrase this question another way. Why learn to build a mansion when you can just build an outhouse? By way of analogy. So don't get me wrong. Commands and Colors, and especially Conflict of Heroes, and I'm openly partial to Conflict of Heroes. I tend to think of Conflict of Heroes with its chit pull mechanic, the cards, and the way they deal with command resources and that act in place of any leaders or legitimate on-map command structure, more like my mistress, while ASL has proven to be my life partner. So either way, these games have their place, and that place consists primarily of simple, fast fun. And you know, this isn't to be taken lightly. This stuff has its place. It's very important. But if you don't have much time, and you don't want to dedicate your life to a rule system, then yeah, this is what you want. But look at it this way: it's 2:30 in the afternoon. You're a bit peckish, so you grab a Snickers and it does the trick. That's what Conflict of Heroes is for. That's what Combat Commander is for. But eventually you're going to want more. You're going to want a full course meal, and this is where ASL comes in. So what is it about ASL? I mean, I've given a list of reasons you might want to get into it. But what is it that makes this game so damn great already? All right, there's no chit pull mechanic, no flashy cards, there's no miniatures, there's no blocks. So what's the point? Well, the point is, this game is so damn good it doesn't need all that stuff. All right? Let's look at some key features of ASL and then see if your appetite increases any. You ready? Here we go. One of the biggest idiosyncrasies of the ASL system is a double whammy and deals with leaders and morale. Every squad and every leader has a morale, and during combat, a squad or leader isn't just killed, they can also break, and this is represented by morale checks in the game. If a squad breaks, then this is where your leaders come in to try and rally them. Which brings us to the combat result table, a thing of beauty and perfection, in my humble opinion, of course. Now, a lot of people have this thing memorized. I'm not one of them. But it basically consists of kills and morale checks, and as your firepower increases, so too does the likelihood that you will get a kill, or at least a morale check with a 1, 2, 3, or even a +4 die roll penalty. So I should also add that it's important to keep the game of golf always in the back of your mind as you play this, because when it comes to dice rolls in this game, the lower the better. And you may have heard ASL aficionados quote the saying, rally well and roll low. Well, that's what they're talking about. So a typical squad counter will have the following information: it's firepower, range, and morale. That's it. Simple enough, right? Beauty and simplicity. Additionally, it might also include a smoke placement exponent, and here's where it starts getting perhaps overbearing to the beginner. An assault fire bonus and a spray fire option. Now, what other games, I ask you, even offer these options. What is more, a squad can deploy, which is break down to a half squad, or they can recombine. If a squad does break, flip the counter over to its broken side, and it depicts its broken morale number. That's it. I might add also that broken units will normally route to cover, and the leader counters will have a morale number and his leadership die roll modifier. And this looks like a dash and then a number, but it should be read as negative such and such number. So if there's a 7 minus 1, that is actually pronounced 7 and negative 1. So leaders can even become wounded in this game. Another cool thing is that when you roll to rally a broken squad, you may trigger what is called heat of battle. And again, I'm going to read this stuff, and I ask you, what other games offer this? Which can result in hero creation, battle hardening, berserk, or surrender. You have support weapons such as flamethrowers, light, medium, and heavy machine guns, satchel charges, Molotov cocktails, it just goes on and on. Panzerfaust with their own particular rate of fire, and I'm referring more so to the machine guns by way of rate of fire. And of course, each squad has a limit to the amount of support weapons they may carry. I mean, this stuff is realistic. It is more of a simulation almost than a game, and I am perfectly fine with that. Whereas Conflict of Heroes, Combat Commander, that is more of a game than a simulation. And you've got concealment and hidden initial placement. You can set up stuff hidden from the opposite player in this game, which allows for a great fog of war mechanic. There's sniper rules, which, when you learn these things, admittedly may seem odd or confusing at first glance, but if you're to study what it was like to actually be a sniper, for example, the amount of genuine, legitimate opportunities you have to fire at quality targets, and unwillingness to reveal your location and at firing at just anything that moves, it's going to make a lot more sense. All nationalities are represented in this thing, so it's interesting to note the distinct capabilities of each nationality. So far, I think the Finns seem to be the top of the pile, the toughest guys on the block. I think when the Finnish module comes out, they will be brought back down to earth a little bit by way of their stats. And maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, but a basic turn is going to look something like this. You start off with your rally phase, so any guys that are broken, you try and rally them, which consists of morale checks, and then your prep fire phase, and this is basically infantry that decide to fire, followed by movement phase and your defensive fire phase, and whosever turn it is moves. But if you move in such a way that the other guy can take a shot at you, then that's what's going to happen. He gets to take a shot at you, and it works great. Advancing fire phase, those guys, I believe that not fire in the prep fire phase can now fire in the advancing fire phase. More specifically, those that did move can fire at half firepower, I think it is. Route phase, those guys that have been broken by a fire must route. And then the advance phase, and this allows you to move, I believe, 1 hex. And then your close combat phase. So that's what a turn consists of, and it's not overly convoluted. Might seem a bit busy, but I'm telling you, once you get the hang of it, this stuff is second nature. So let's look at movement for a second, and again, this is just to give you a glimpse of what's going on for those of you specifically who haven't played it and don't know what they're in for. So you move a counter and that's it, right? No way. Not with ASL. As you get into the more advanced features, you're going to learn that there's many, many options to consider. For instance, when it comes to movement, such as you can use assault movement, you can dash, you can double time, you can bypass, and a lot of these games, once you move into a hex, everything in that hex just kind of gets combined into one congealed mass of solidity. But in ASL, you can differentiate between certain things in a hex, and if you say there's a building in a hex and you don't want to enter that building. Well, most other games, if you move into that hex, you are it's understood that you're in that building. But in ASL, you can bypass that building for movement purposes and go to the next hex. To add to the realism, there is also a penalty for moving into the open. So again, I mean, this thing is more of a simulation than a game, and I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but well, it is. Then we'll look at firing briefly, real quick. You can fire at greater than your range, but you get a penalty. You fire at half firepower. Then again, if you're firing into an adjacent hex, you get to double your firepower. And with support weapons, these things can act, especially machine guns, these things can actually break. And this roughly represents, I guess, jamming or overheating or running out of ammo. I also add that line of sight is key to this game. A lot of line of sight checks happen unless you become overly familiar with a particular scenario and its accompanying board. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that never have to make line of sight checks because they know from memory the lines of sight. But again, another feature of realism. You know, if you can't see it or something's hindered, that's going to affect your shot. Luckily, there are many constants in this game that make for easy remembering by way of learning, and such as terrain. For example, you're going to have your woods, your buildings with both stone and wood each, and each has its own set fire modifier, and this doesn't change. So regarding your cover, that's pretty much stays constant, and you can learn to integrate that into your combat results table. And that's literally just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, you can only imagine the gun and armor rules, and this brings up another thing. You have to be careful and not let yourself become overwhelmed. You don't want to, it's easy to do. You don't want to try and swallow this thing whole. You want to take little bites here and there until you've eaten up everything. And you have to remember to breathe and know that you won't remember everything. And luckily you don't have to. I mean, you get the basics down, and that's what the rule book's there for. You can refer back to it. You want to focus on getting down the basics and then add a little something. Get that down, then add a little something more. Now, I don't own, nor have I ever looked, as I said, at the starter kit, so I don't know how they function. But I imagine they ease you into everything, so you're not going to be thrown into anything over your head where you risk drowning. They're going to take care of you. So the basics of the game are flawless. I mean, more or less. And this is what drives the game. But as you get more and more into it, the details that come up is what really flesh this thing out. And there's just too many to name here. But you have to take my word for it. And for instance, shouldn't a wooden building possibly catch fire based on certain conditions? Well, in this game, that can happen. That's just a for instance. So alas, no more excuses. There really has never been a better time than now to get into ASL. I mean, with all this, once you learn the basics, there's so much stuff you can turn in any direction. And it's just a great system. And that's going to be the end of the ASL meat of the matter. But finally, this week marks a new section, which I'm going to attempt to add to the Hexes and Soldiers podcast, see how it goes over. And I want it to be somewhat interactive, but we'll see how that goes. And I think I'll call it Name of the Game. And what I'm going to do is give a clue or series of clues each week from a specific game, which could come from the rules or even the map encounters, and see if you can name the game. So that sounds simple enough, right? Well, we'll see. And I'll have to gauge how difficult or easy to make these questions based on this guinea pig or yardstick, if you will. And so this week's clue is drawn from a specific rule book and comes from section 5.1 entitled Paragraph Checks. And I'll just read the rule here. A paragraph check represents an event that would occur to the crews of the vehicles during a mission. These checks are used to give the player information, activate Germans, and to generally control the German side of play. These checks are critical to the successful play of the game, and players should be very familiar with this rules section. Now, if I were you, I would immediately think of something, and I wouldn't blame you, but it's actually, I don't think, quite that obvious. So don't go with your first gut reaction here, but you might be close. So feel free to submit your answers below the show and see if you get it right. And I think that's about it. This show is now, actually, it's long, but I was thinking maybe an hour and a half, and it was scaring me, but luckily that hasn't happened. So what's the next episode? Again, my moods change. Which way the wind blows, I guess, will determine. I'm leaning towards some sort of like Africa core type show. This show had no history in it. That'll be taken care of in the next show, or most definitely in the show after that. I'd like to look possibly in depth at game design, what that entails, and maybe even what it takes to design a game. What are the concerns? What are the things that need to be taken into account? And then I have, and this might be a little, I don't know, down the side road, perhaps, if you will, from the mainstream, but there's a designer. Actually, he's more of a philosopher, and I may have mentioned him in the past, but his name's Guy Debord, and it's spelled Debord. Debord. French guy from the 60s, involved in what became known as the Situationist International, and wrote a treatise on some things entitled Society of the Spectacle. But the odd thing is the direction that this guy was heading. It's almost like he did a complete 180 or something, and just designed this board game and just became obsessed with it. And he even admitted that he was worried that he would become more known for this game than the book that he had written. And I don't know that that's happened, but it's just an interesting turn of events, and I would like to maybe possibly talk more about that, and what causes a person like this, who, like I said, was heading one direction, to all of a sudden become interested in war games, and specifically designing one of his own. And this game still has a pretty big following, especially in England. There's some people over there, some groups that specifically celebrate this game. But anyway, I digress. I might get into something about that, and it might be, like I said, a little off the beaten path, but well, why not? So that's it for Hexes and Soldiers, episode 19. Episode 20 will be posted when it's posted. Speaking of post, the post office is starting to keep me a little more busy, so we'll see how that plays into everything. And also, I wanted to devote more time to play, and I have been doing that and will continue to do that. And this show should have been delayed, but as the amount of news that popped up, I wanted to get it out there to you guys rather than let it sit on the burner and burn. So did that for you. So thanks for listening, and keep gaming.
See the taste is like so damn the songs alive.